General practice was asked to move to a total digital triage method back when COVID first kicked off. Some practices found that easy to do, some practices found that really challenging to do. And over the past few years, different practices have taken different approaches to the whole capacity, demand, and access question. We've obviously more recently had the capacity improvement plans that many practices are doing with their networks to figure out this whole concept of access. And in this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Nat Martin, who's going to talk about her practice's journey to use total digital triage to both help their patients, but also to help their practice team manage demand and make things so much easier for everyone involved. It's Tech Enhance Your Primary Care and Learning. Hello, eGP learners. Welcome to this stream where we're joined by Dr. Natalie Martin, or Nat Martin, as she likes to be called, from Pitfalls and stuff. And we're going to be hearing about her journey with total digital triage. How are we doing there, Nat?
Hi. So yeah, I'm Nat Martin, and I am a GP partner at the Park Surgery in Driffield. So I've just wanted to talk to you about total digital triage because it's very topical at the minute. Obviously, with these contracting positions, it's something that we're all being pushed towards. So some background about our practice. We're a 15,000 patient practice. We're semi-rural. We have a reasonable number of elderly patients. We're slightly above the East Riding average. And we, team-wise, have quite a mixed team. So we have got a lot of ACPs, we have 2 AMPs, we have 3 trainee AMPs, 2 clinical pharmacists, a first contact physio, we're a training practice, we have F2s, registrars, we also have 3 salaried GPs and 4 GP partners. So that's a bit about us. In terms of our general capacity, on a good week, we have about 854 appointments. On an average week, so taking into account everyone's annual leave, etc., we have about 756. We tend to front load our appointment system so that the highest number of appointments are on a Monday. So why did we do digital triage? So about a year ago, we decided that our appointment system wasn't working as well as it could be. The people that really needed appointments weren't getting them. The same people were getting them over and over again, or people with lesser need but more able to get through or make their case heard were getting the appointments. Initially, we tried to rectify this by improving reception skill, their care navigation, their understanding of who fits best with what type of appointment. We made documents to help them with that, and things did improve a little, but after a couple of months I reviewed it and didn't feel that things were improving sufficiently. I'd heard about digital total triage, and we were previously a total triage phone practice call first type system, so it's not a million miles away. So started looking into what other people were offering around. I knew that, for example, some of the York practices were using Clinic to offer total digital triage, so that's something we considered. We knew that there was also AccuRx, which we were already using for e-consult purposes. We looked at Clinic and decided that actually it was kind of sledgehammer to crack a nut, a bit more complicated than we really wanted. We'd already got AccuRx, it was funded, and we liked the simplicity of its questioning. So we decided, actually, let's give it a try with AccuRx and see how it goes. So we went live with our total digital triage system last April, so April 2022. Now, about a month before that, we started the planning and preparation for going live. So that involved several kind of messages to patients, both using Facebook to fully explain what it is we were going to do and why we wanted to do it, with a link to what the AccuRx form would look like for them. We got quite a lot of comments and interaction on that post, the majority of which was positive, actually. We did another post to remind them that the system was going live a couple of weeks after the initial one. We also informed the local paper so that they could publicise the fact that we were changing to this system. And we put some information about it on our website and changed how that worked. So in terms of kind of preparing staff, I did some work with our lead receptionist, kind of giving her an overview of what the model would look like and getting her to come back with any feedback that she might have, or anything that she could identify as a pitfall already. And we realised we needed to set a specific team that would deal with the incoming messages from AccuRx, and that we might need to get some help from the admin team, because our reception and admin are separate, first thing in the morning to deal with that high volume when it first opens up. So we did those things to kind of prepare for it. And then in terms of, then it was on to kind of setting up the system. So there was, in order to get the system set up properly, there needed to be some prep work looking at our appointments. So I looked at our appointments across a week. I found out what type of things we were seeing, and I kind of reverse triaged them to look, if I was triaging this, what time frame would I have wanted this to be seen in? So I could work out how our embargoes should work on the system, how many same day appointments should we be putting on for triage, how many 4-week appointments, 2-week appointments, etc., and how should those splits vary depending on the type of clinician. And I think that's really important to get right from the start. So I'm glad that I put that work in there. So our system is set up. What happens on a day-to-day basis is the AccuRx opens from 7 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So between those times, the patients can submit their forms, and we have someone running the triage who is also the duty GP. So the duty GP is the triager. Up to now, it's been a partner. We are going to start asking salaried GPs to help with that. But we did, as part of our initial setup, and I think what is really important is making sure that everyone's triaging in a similar way. So we did a lot of communication. We even had a WhatsApp group about triages in the early days, kind of how would you triage this if it was problematic or you weren't sure, so that we could really align our triaging so that we were doing very similar things, and that makes it easier for us, for patients, what to expect, and for staff. We have the duty does the triage. The triage starts coming in from 7 AM, shuts at 4. Once our appointments are full for the day, if new acute problems come in that the triager decides should be seen that day, we send them elsewhere. So either urgent care centre, A&E, 111, depending on what we decide is most appropriate. The other options that we have are pre-booking appointments, and we have different types of pre-booking appointment slots. So in order to utilise the self-book feature, which I would recommend, because if you don't utilise self-book, your receptionists are left having to do a lot more work. The self-book feature, you have to set up specific slot types. If you wanted to do, you could theoretically set everyone up their own individual slot type, but I think that would be messy. So what we have done is set slot types. The ones that we have are GP phone calls and GP face-to-faces with different time frames. So we have 2 weeks and 4 weeks for those. We have a group slot, which we've grouped kind of skills. So AMPs, F2s, and GP registrars are in one group, because they have a similar skill level, and once again, time frames 2 weeks, 4 weeks, so we can send those booking slots out. Some of our things that come through triage will just need some safety netting off some information because they've come through and actually they don't really need an appointment. We set ourselves up a whole load of safety netting text, which we thoroughly researched to make sure they were sending the right clinical information, because some of just using the NHS pages, for example, it wouldn't be what you'd really want. So we put a lot of effort into that, and I have put a page of those on GP Resilience, and we use those quite a lot, and with a reasonable degree of success. So we noticed that at first patients would maybe try and push back against those a bit, but it took about 3 months. But over 3 months, they really did start to accept it more, and we started to see less of those things presenting. People have asked, is it that they just took themselves to urgent care centre? Well, no, that's not what urgent care centre are telling us. It looks like we've genuinely managed to educate some patients, which I'm really pleased about. So I think there's been concern about how many triages you get per day. So it varies a lot. So Thursday's probably averaging about 150. Monday is probably averaging about 280. It can get higher after bank holidays. The most it's been so far is 328. We do only have one person triaging every day, but we do on a Monday, someone will chip in. So for example, I'll do tutorials and then I'll help with the triage. So shall we move on to pitfalls? Okay, so yeah, don't underestimate how time intensive it'll be on reception, especially at first. It eases off, they get used to it. It takes them time to understand maybe what it is that they need to do and how to most swiftly kind of and successfully interact with the patients and explain what it is that you want them to do or book their appointments. For us, for the volume that we're dealing with, at first we did have 4 people in the triage in the early hours of the morning, so from 7 o'clock until 10 o'clock in the morning, but we've managed to pull that back, and now we only tend to have 2. So the other thing to watch out for is multiple AccuRxs from the same patient, which then, if you don't realise, will result in multiple separate appointments that are quite disjoint. So generally, just if you can have a dip in the notes, check what they've already got. You do start to quickly realise who these people are, and watch out for it a bit more, and reception are on the ball with that as well. When you set up your appointments and your embargoes, my top tip is the early morning slots, make those ones that release in advance, because if you try and get people in those on the day, they can't get there in time, it doesn't work, it's not appropriate, and you end up spending loads of time going back and forth trying to get them into appointments, which is totally just wasted time. So make those you book in advance slots, and try and do a minimal, like one-touch approach to triage is what I try and do. So if you can't triage it and you've been back clarifying more than twice, you just need to give an appointment. You're just going to get trapped in this stream of going back to reception, clarifying information, and that becomes really inefficient and stressful. Watch out for things, if you use AccuRx, going into the admin section that should have been in the clinical system, because patients accidentally do that, and you can find actually you've left the admin till later on, and suddenly you find something that needs to be seen that day and it could have been sorted out earlier on. So watch out for that. I've now got reception scanning through the admins to see A, is there anything they can deal with, B, is there any of these people sat in there. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the main pitfalls.
Okie dokie. So thank you for that. I know that was a really good and concise, explanation of the kind of process, the system, the journey, and everything that you went through and stuff, and definitely identifying some of those pitfalls that many people may have come across or not even thought about, to be honest, in terms of helping that journey. And you can definitely see the appreciation. So already there's comments on, from Aisling Martin. It's brilliant. Thank you for doing this and stuff. And then we've got some questions as well coming through. So I think we are going to go to those questions and comments right now. I'm going to jump in with a couple, if that's all right, from my perspective, hearing your journey with that, and then definitely hand over to those watching us live. So if you do have your questions and stuff, stick them down in the chat, because really would appreciate it. Interestingly, just to get an idea, so I've asked some questions to our live viewers and stuff, how many of them have already considered doing total digital triage. So 80% of them have said that they've not done that yet, but that may be something they're now potentially looking at, so we'll see how that goes. I guess a couple of quick nuts and bolts questions that we've had, so just to clarify some stuff. So I can't pronounce it, Liao Hao Wu, and what's your practice list size? I know you mentioned that at the beginning, but it'd be useful, I guess, just to refresh for everybody who's joining us now.
Yep. So it's 15,000.
Cool. And I know that you mentioned about this whole concept. I guess one of the things many people probably feel quite challenging right now is that what happens when you're full. And I know that you mentioned that when you get to a point where you don't have any availability, you will direct patients to other areas like walk-in centres, A&E, etc., as appropriate. Can you give us an idea of the kind of like script that you would approach patients with that? Because I can understand for many clinicians that's sometimes a stressful thing to consider doing. Have you got any tips, I guess, or any kind of scripts that you would typically use when you're trying to explain that to patients about that issue?
Well, you're doing digital total triage, so you're probably going to be sending the message via your reception team who's sending the message to the patient. But basically, we're just quite strict on it. We tell them, unfortunately, all our clinical capacity is full for the day.
Okay. Yeah.
The doctor has read your triage information and decided that you need to go to wherever it is, urgent care centre, A&E. These are the reasons why. I always make sure that I give them the reasons why and the things that I'm concerned about, so that they can make an informed decision about whether they go or not. And most of the time, they are actually happy to go. You do get the odd ones that fight back, but they're often the ones where it weren't that you were full. They just needed to go to A&E anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's useful to hear. So obviously mentioning that you've hit your capacity, mentioning obviously where they need to go, and like you said, it's that additional thing of it, why, and probably I guess what you're saying is tailoring some of that why to the specific stuff that they've said, not just the general you need to go to A&E, off you go kind of thing. It's giving that specific, and I think like you say that it's a really helpful thing to do in any consultation, justifying your actions and stuff. But as you mentioned with the digital option, it is a bit more challenging because you lose potentially tone, you lose all the other kind of stuff and things. So yeah, cool. You mentioned about this whole kind of reverse setup process you went through, and that gave you some serious gains in terms of how to assess the whole capacity side of things. Can you just briefly expand on what that process was and how you kind of approached it and stuff?
Yeah, so basically I just took a two-week block of on the system. I went through everyone's appointments. I made a spreadsheet of what each problem was about and what length of time I would have thought was an appropriate triage and what type of clinician I would have thought was an appropriate clinician. So I could see for each clinician type how many slots would suit a book in advance kind of option and how many would need to be seen on the day, so I could set up my embargo ratio to meet the need that I was seeing.
And before you did that, did you do some any additional work, I guess, because you mentioned a massive breadth of clinicians that you've got within your practice. Was there any kind of exercise before that just to, I guess, to refresh what people currently could do? Because I can appreciate, obviously, sometimes we think we know, but often we don't always know what people can kind of do and stuff, I guess.
I think, that is one of my top 3 take-home messages is know your people. So you really need to know what they're capable of. I didn't need to do that in the beginning because at the time we started it, I did really feel I had a good understanding of what my staff could do. I did actually do that kind of halfway through the year. It wasn't specifically for the triage, although that was one of the advantages. It was to tailor our weekly teaching. But it was a side gain for the triage. And actually, I was really pleased because it matched up entirely with what I already thought. So I think if you don't know your team really well, it's a really good exercise to do. Something similar to the thing you do with registrars, where you get them to rate their skill level across a whole list of clinical areas. That's what I did with ours. But yeah, if you don't know your team very well, I would definitely do that.
Okay. So I'm going to go to the questions because we've got loads, and I do mean loads, coming through. So we're going to try and get through as many as we can. Apologies if we don't get to your question. We will try our best to see what we can do and things. And I know that there's some duplication in there as well anyway. So let's go to this one first of all, again from Aisling Martin. How do you send booking links to those who need interpreters? Because we have double appointments for that.
Right, so people that need interpreters, I wouldn't use a booking link. So I'd use my reception. I have to tell you that this is not a common thing. We're in rural East Yorkshire, and yeah, we're talking a handful of patients for us. But generally, we sort that via reception, and mostly we'll give people a face-to-face and arrange an interpreter in that way, rather than trying to do it through links. I don't see that working quite. I think that'd take a lot of thought to get right.
And I think from my perspective as well, working in an area where we do have a significant proportion of interpreters, so inner city Nottingham, that kind of stuff, in terms of non-English speaking patients and things, it's not only just the arrangement of the appointment. As you mentioned, you've also got to arrange the interpreter. So coordinating those two things, that's exceptionally difficult to do through digital only routes. So you inevitably still have to call the interpreter service or stuff, or particularly if it's for an appointment that's fairly soon. So realistically, handling that through the synchronous element of a telephone is probably far superior than any gains you would get through a booking link and stuff in that situation. Obviously, booking links work really well when the patient themselves know what they're doing and can be directed to what they need to do. Non-English speaking, I guess learning disabled patients to some degree as well, they're a bit more challenging because they need to be able to navigate the system and stuff. I think that reflects to one of the other questions, which I've got to find now. Where's it gone? Okay, I'll have to come back because I can't find it now. It's disappeared. Yeah, so this one came through. You mentioned about the number of calls that you get. So I think roughly 150 on a Thursday, can be up to about 280 on a Monday. Maximum was 328 or something. How do clinicians feel about the volume of requests? That's a question from Melissa Morley.
Okay, so our honest answer, it varies. So I feel fine about it, but it depends how your brain works. If your brain's set up in a very triage kind of logical computer-like way, you'll tend to find it easier than those that are not set up in that way. Everyone finds it manageable, but it's the Mondays. So the ones where it's 200 and below, everyone manages. The Mondays where there's up to 328, they are quite hardcore, and there's only 2 of us that do Mondays because of that reason.
Okay.
But like I say, you can try and get people to chip in, and then it's not so bad.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not easy, but it is, to me, better than a standard duty day 3 years ago when we were not capping his list and letting and seeing tons and tons of people. That were harder call than this.
And I guess, if you're talking about 200 contacts a day, that's a lot of decision potential fatigue that you're dealing with. So I guess 2 questions with that. How long would an average 200 list potentially take you? Are we talking how much of that actual day? And secondly, what kind of things have you or your team been doing to try and help with the decision fatigue side of it if you're responsible for that kind of workload?
Okay. So how long does it take us? So generally we all try and come in at about 7:30, 8:15 to get ahead of it. And on a day like Tuesday, where there's 200-ish coming through, I can get through those by 4 o'clock, and I will have been supervising various people as well. On a Monday, when it's over 300, you will still be going till about 6:30. But once again, you will have supervised a load of people as well.
Okay.
So you're not just doing triage here.
Sure. And I guess that second question, is there anything you put in place to, I guess, help manage the risk of the decision fatigue? I guess just, idea breaks, other kind of thing to break up the day, that kind of stuff, I guess I'm looking at.
Okay, so there's some natural breaks in the day, because for certain parts of the day you kind of doing more of the debriefing type stuff, and yeah, it's not a rest, but it's a different type of work. Like on a Friday you'll have a break to do the teaching. Yeah, I mean, personally, we'll sit and have lunch with people when they come in. Yeah, I mean, and for those people that do find it a little bit more challenging, the others of us will try and chip in and help when we get a minute, even if that's just doing a few admin ones, a few fit notes. That's helpful. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, okay, I found that question I was looking for. So, from Bethany Lambert, how do patients without access to the internet interact with your system?
Okay. So though they can phone. So they can phone and they can tell reception their problem, and the reception fills out the form for them. Or they can come down and they can have a printed version of the form, and they can write out the answers to the questions and hand it back in. And then obviously someone will phone them and contact them with the outcome.
Sure. So next question we've got is from Melissa Mully again. So thank you for doing this. We started doing accurate triage, but within 6 weeks had to revert due to holiday, long-term sickness, GP overwhelmed with the number of requests. But it shows how patients need more pre-bookables, not necessarily on the day. I guess, have there been any periods in your journey where you've had issues with the staffing because of, for whatever reason, and how have you addressed that when it comes to having enough people to manage this kind of mechanism?
Okay. Yeah. So there have been times where there's been like a lot of sickness. So for example, Easter week, we suddenly had a lot of people off sick and some unexpected things like bereavements. Yeah. And I was doing the Tuesday post Easter, and we had very little capacity. I think I had 328 AccuRx that day. I were on my own. I had very few same day book appointments. I think I had something like 30 tops. Basically, the fact that we've got pre-books does save you, because loads of the things are suitable for a pre-bookable appointment. And also sticking very strictly to the we are full. So that day, there was nothing I could do about that. I couldn't get anyone to come and help. I turned the opal to black, and when we hit capacity, I redirected them.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and similarly, there's been a couple of situations where I've had to, for the practice, because of sickness and that kind of stuff, put us down as opal black, which I know some people feel really challenged to do at times, because it feels like you're not doing your job kind of thing. But the reality is sometimes things are just beyond your control, and recognizing that you're at that capacity in terms of safe working is a really essential thing and stuff. Can understand that absolutely. So love the name, Caverna Tiwari. Do you offer appointments for patients to book in directly into, I guess, the personalized care roles, so things like care coordinators, social prescribers, health and wellbeing coaches and stuff?
No. So our care coordinators don't work in that way. Okay. So we probably just have a different setup with the care coordinators. They're not doing that type of stuff. And social prescribers, we don't have any. We have the social prescribers that are given through the ICB. We don't have any specific ones that are based in our practice. And the referrals to them come through us.
Okay. And I guess if we expand that, then what about other kind of roles? So I know you mentioned the FCP and that kind of stuff. Are there any of the roles where patients can book directly through, or does everything come through the total triage no matter what?
So chronic disease nurses book normal, they just phone reception. Bloods book normal, smears book normal, immunisations all book normal. The things that come through triage are anyone that's an ACP, so your advanced MSKs, your clinical pharmacists, your AMPs, that group of people. But basic practice nurse and chronic disease nurses, they are all allowed to book through reception.
Okie dokie. So I guess with some of that, obviously there's been a massive shift towards care navigation, in particularly the updated stuff from the delivery plan about recovering general practice. So Laura Chapman's asking a question about how does care navigation fit into the triage approach that you take?
Yeah, so I still want my reception care navigating. So they still have the documents that I produced for them when I helped them to care navigate. So obviously they can't screen the ones that are coming through digitally, but the ones that are coming through from the ones that are coming through on the phone, if they're asking them to submit the form for them, if they realise that actually that patient would be better suited for elsewhere, and they could care navigate them, I'd expect them to be doing that, not submitting a form for the patient. Likewise, after 4 o'clock, when the triage turns off, I want them to be using their care navigation skills then to know where to send and direct people once they know that the capacity is full. So I want it that if someone phones up and it's very obvious that they need seeing that day from the care navigation training I've given them, they don't come to me, they already know where to send them, off they go. So I don't want to de-skill my reception team.
Absolutely.
2 seconds while I turn the light on.
No problem. Benefits of being live, sometimes things go really well, and sometimes you just need to switch a light on. There you go. So next question I've got from where have we gone? Yeah, Aisling Martin again. So do you have cloud-based telephony? This is obviously the big thing that we got from the delivery plan about, this is going to change general practice. What have you got that set up yet?
Yep, had it for 2 years. Yep.
Okay. And was that one of the tools that helped you get that data to understand some of the changes that you were going to make and stuff?
I didn't use it to get that data. I used the EMIS and the appointment data for that. I did use it when I did a piece of work to analyse our phone waiting times and why our phone waiting times were so large, and it helped me to establish a call board in reception so that I could divert the workforce as needed.
Okay, cool. So talking again about that clinical stuff that comes through, so Aisling's asked, of the 280 on a Monday, what's the divide in terms of that being clinical versus that being administrative in terms of the split from your perspective? Appreciate it's going to be different every day.
Yeah. I don't have the data. It's probably about 30% admin.
Okay. And do you find that changes throughout the week from your perspective? Again, appreciate you probably don't have the data at hand.
No, it's quite similar. The admin medical split is quite similar throughout the week.
Okay. So again, from Caverna, as a duty doctor, who is triaging? Is that all you do the whole time? How does it feel? And is it liked, or do you feel perhaps GPs take turn every couple of hours to get a break may work more effectively in some way?
Okay.
Sorry, there's a lot there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I was really taking it all in.
No, it's all right. So I think the first part was as a duty doctor, who's so is it? Yeah, I think you said it was the duty doctor is also the triage doctor. Is that correct?
The duty doctor is the triage doctor. They are also supervising the people that need supervising, so the GP registrars and the F2s and the trainee AMPs. They also would kind of supervise kind of ECGs, check ECGs that need checking before patients leave, and they will deal with like someone from the blood pressure machine whose blood pressures come back too high above the protocol.
Okay, cool. Nicola asked the question, do reception ring them to say that you're full and redirect, or do you just send a text?
Reception ring them. I wouldn't send a text for that. I think they need an explanation. Like, there's no way you can ring them. Don't even try. You do not have time for that. But we get reception to ring them, and it's like I said before, I think it's really important that reception can say that it's come from you, that you have read and understood what their condition is, and that you feel that this is the most appropriate route and why.
Okay. So question from Helen Ruffle, how far ahead do you have the pre-bookables available, and do you allow a text reminder?
Yeah, so we have the pre-bookables. We have 6 weeks on our system at all times, so theoretically they can book up to 6 weeks in advance, because that's part of how, if you've got those slots there and you're sending out self books, they can book any that are on your system, so they can book up to 6 weeks in advance. And yeah, we allow text reminders.
And how do you feel that works with your DNA rate then, if you're booking potentially 6 weeks in advance and stuff?
To our DNA rate, it's made very little difference. I think it's gone up a little, But unfortunately, our DNA rate has always been high. Even when we were doing all the same day, call first, they still didn't answer the calls. So that's a piece of work that we're currently doing to address that. But for us, it's not made much difference. But that might be because our DNA rate's always been high.
Okay, fair enough. Aisling again asks, how long did it take you to do that 2-week look back in terms of that, what kind of audit you did, you know, the reverse kind of look back and stuff?
I've done it on a weekend, probably a day, half a day. Yeah.
Cool. And then from Nicola Cook, if 30 same day appointments was a disastrous day, how many do you say would be an average day? So earlier you mentioned on that Easter day you had only 30 face-to-face, I think, appointments, and so you said that was a bad day because obviously you'd lost staff. What would you say would be your comfortable for a, let's go for a Monday, typical Monday, and what would you say would be your comfortable for a, let's go midweek, Wednesday, bearing in mind you said that you had 13,000 patients? Sorry, I've forgotten already myself.
15,000.
There you go, 15,000.
Yeah, I'm going to do the maths for you. Hold on.
Oh, even better. So for those of you joining us live, we're going through how Dr. Nat Martin instigated total triage system within her practice and stuff. And absolutely feel free, if you've only just joined us, to go back and have a look at the earlier part where she's explained that whole process. Right now, she's just working out some numbers for us and stuff. And we've talked about a variety of different things in terms of how that process started, how she recognized the need for it, and more importantly, change that processes, them both the pros and the cons, and how to fix the cons as well. So definitely feel free to go back and watch that. You're welcome to join us for the questions and stuff, but we're going to just take the last few questions if you are joining us live. And that's about to answer the question about the number of appointments that they had on average available per day.
So the quick maths, the average across the week is about 80 per day, but it does vary because we front load on Mondays, so many more on Mondays. Our least staffed day is probably Tuesdays.
Okay. I'm guessing not on a bank holiday Tuesday, though. No, fair enough. Cool. And then let's go for Helen. So she mentions, how far ahead do you have a self-booking GP appointment? So I'm guessing that's using the accurate self-book link and stuff.
Yeah, so that is like we call them 4-week ones, but they can book up to 6 weeks because we put on appointments up to 6 weeks. And like I said before, if you put self-book slots on, if they're on there, they're on there. They can book them.
Okay. And in terms of what, I know we looked at the kind of number of face-to-face appointments you typically have on an average day. What ratio of appointments do you say would be book on the day versus pre-bookable for GPs?
Yep, so I've got it in this document. Just 2 secs. Let me find it. Yeah, so the GP 70% pre-book.
Pre-book, yeah. And it's interesting, I've heard of other models where they focus very much on the pre-bookable as a way of trying to manage demand and stuff for their patients. And it's interesting how, as long as you have an idea of the data and the way that patients are accessing you, actually these appointment systems can work. And that's where the data can be really valuable and stuff in helping you understand that process. And like Nat mentioned, knowing the capabilities of your workforce, because actually that's the thing that's different for everybody. You know, let's remember that every practice is different. And I can appreciate many people are watching this thinking, oh, we couldn't do that, we don't have this, we don't have that. That's not the issue. The issue is the approach, understanding your workforce and using the data that you've got to try and tackle that, and somehow finding the headspace to figure it all out more than anything else. So I'm going to take the last couple of questions. So from Helen again, what training did you give the reception and clinical staff?
Yeah, so I think like we said in the beginning, I went through how the system would work with our lead receptionist and what the setup would look like with having an Accurate team, and they and she went away with that, looked at any pitfalls and came back with any questions, and she discussed that with her team. There wasn't much training because there's not that much to it really. You just you just get replies from a GP and you deal with that reply. More training was needed for things like care navigation than was for this. That were far more labour intensive than training the reception staff for this.
Okay. And did you use, I guess, any additional tools like, I guess, some of the care navigation packages, any additional kind of things that you felt you had to, I don't know, access or buy in or all that kind of stuff for the teams?
No, they've done care navigation that were provided by the ICB, but that was many years ago, and they didn't find it very useful. They found the in-house one that I did, and I did take some PTL days out to do care navigation training with them. More helpful.
Okay, fair enough. And then how often do you reach capacity? So you mentioned that obviously some days you are just turning around to patients saying, sorry, we're full. How often would you say that ends up happening?
Okay, so I'd say that we reach capacity most days, but on a lot of days you'd only be you reach capacity and you're only sending a few elsewhere. I did actually audit it, and I've got the numbers somewhere. So I looked at February half-term week, the year before we went to this system, and in that week we had sent, let's have a look, where has it gone? Yeah, I can't find it. Over 300 people we'd sent to walk-in centre. And then when we re-audited it this year, after going to this total triage, we'd only sent about 8.
Wow.
So
that's massive.
It were massive. I want to find you the real numbers now. It's annoying me.
Wow, I'm flabbergasted. That is a huge variation and change, you know, massively there in terms of going from 300 to 8. That's impressive, to say the least. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was 293 down to 7.
Okay, and there you heard it. So it can have real impact on the rest of the system. I guess that's sometimes one of the things to also be aware of, the impact you're having on the rest of the system around you, because that's, you know, useful information you can use within the networks, within the system, that kind of stuff, to exemplify some of the amazing work that happens in general practice. I guess we are talking about the system. How many 111 calls bounce back to you from your experience?
Yeah. Okay. Do not use 111 very much. 111 calls mainly all bounce back. When you go into Opal Black, which you should use when you're full because that's what it's there for, they don't bounce back anymore.
True. So if people aren't aware what that is, that's the directory of service change that you can make. It is an active change you have to do on a daily basis if you hit that capacity, and it is one of the recommendations made by the BMA in terms of their safe working guidance and stuff. So definitely feel free to have a look at that as one of the actions, both recommended by the BMA. I know some of the LMCs have also recommended those changes if you hit that capacity and stuff, because it's definitely a marker of change in terms of obviously the capacity that we have in general practice and stuff. Amy Chowdhury mentioned about using some additional tools like Dr. Sophie, and I guess also if people want to use the eGPlearning ones to help out, absolutely free to do so. But in terms of helping patients understand aspects, because she felt that giving them more information about the conditions often help them understand and navigate things a bit better. Are there any additional resources you use? I know you mentioned about creating your own kind of safety netting messages and stuff. And obviously, we know that NHS.uk is a resource. As you mentioned, it's not always the one that fits well. What other resources could you have you used, I guess?
Oh, yeah, they're all very different. There is a document on GP Resilience that has all our safety netting texts on, and you'll find that the links vary in sources. Me and one of my other partners scoured the internet for good documents and good links that fit with what we feel is clinical appropriate treatment. It's not too alarmist and is not too laid back.
Okay. I guess if it's all right with you, Nat, one thing I'd probably ask then, if we could get a copy of that and put that to the show notes for this, would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Yep.
Awesome. So if you are watching this on the replay, do feel free to have a look. Give me a day or so to sort that out for you at least. And then hopefully that should be available and stuff, because I know I'm going to get comments from people, where's the document, in the comments and stuff. So day at least, please, just to get that sorted for you all and stuff. And I guess just therefore to finish off, if people did have any specific questions they wanted to ask you about this whole journey, about the process, that kind of stuff, where would you suggest they have a look, and where would you direct them to and stuff?
If they wanted to ask.
Contact you.
Contact me. Yeah, okay. So yeah, you can email me. There you go. Or you can Facebook message me. I'm happy with either. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that you're an active kind of member of quite a few of the various different GP groups. You mentioned Resilient GP. I know there's the partners group as well, and various other ones that you're part of and stuff. And actually, that's how me and Nat came across each other in terms of this kind of stuff. So if there are other people as well that wanted to share their journey in terms of how they've integrated access and stuff, always keen to help and share those messages and stuff. Thank you for joining us, Nat. I know taking some of your time of your day out of a busy on call, because you were doing triage just before we started as well. Just to point out to everybody that is watching this live, she had literally come from a triage clinic straight into this to help everybody and stuff. So thank you for doing that, and show your appreciation by leaving a like, and definitely share this within your teams and stuff, because actually that's how we want to try and spread the message of what you could potentially do with the tools that you've got. As always, if people have other questions, feel free to stick them down in the chat and stuff. I'll try and come back to them a bit later on. And as ever, we're here to help enhance your primary care and learning. And if you want, check out this video coming up right here that tells you more about cloud-based telephony and stuff that's going to be coming up shortly for you. Catch you soon. Thanks, Nat.
Okay. Bye.